Everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is James Ong. I'm the host today for the Tech Tuesday, but we will have a moderator to join us today. Welcome everybody to come. Today is organized by SingCham Shanghai Tech Tuesday signature event. We have been doing this event for a while. Today's topic is about tech for good. Tech for good, and the topic is about how we can enable or empower better society with sustainable technology. And today we have invited a moderator, Renee Tan, as well as three speakers, which she will introduce later on. And I'll let you scan this later on. The agenda for today is we started a little bit late. So we're doing the welcome. Then I would like to invite our Vice Chair from SingCham, William, to give introduction about SingCham for those who are not familiar, as well as I will do an introduction about Tech Tuesday and as well as about community partner. After that, I will introduce our moderator and pass over the control to Renee. Then after that, we're going to have a sequence of 10 minutes panel presentation, including myself as one of them. And then we'll have a roundtable panel session with Q&A. For those of you with any question, feel free to type into the chat group or even ask it in person. Then after that, we're going to wrap up with some photo shoot, as well as information on some exciting upcoming SingCham event as well, related to this tech for good. All right. So as such, I'm going to move to the next. William, I'd like to introduce you all to William Chang, our Vice Chair of SingCham. William, the baton is passed over to you.
Hi everyone. Good evening. It might be good if those who are not speaking could mute your mic so it doesn't. Okay, that doesn't affect the rest. Right. SingCham's mission is to put members' interests first, to be business-centric, and at the same time to act as a social glue to connect our Singapore communities. We are a non-profit membership-based organization with EXCO members who are all volunteers. SingCham Shanghai drives the commercial interests of Singaporean business community in Shanghai and create industry-focused events and networking platforms for Singapore companies to interact, learn, and exchange ideas with Chinese enterprises, and hopefully realize new business opportunities. The following slides will give you a flavor of events SingCham Shanghai has organized over the past year. I look forward to more members' participation in future SingCham events. And most importantly, I welcome those who are not SingCham members to sign up with us and join our networking events. Sustainability is a widely discussed topic nowadays. It's about every one of us taking responsible action to tackle climate change. This requires the collective efforts of individuals, companies, industries, governments, and also technologies. How can we develop innovative technologies that are sustainable and can create a positive impact on society and humans? That's the focus of tonight's Tech Tuesday, which I will hand over to the host of the forum, James Ong. Thank you, James.
Thank you, William. I'm going to do a quick introductions about Tech Tuesday. Tech Tuesday is a signature event under SingCham Shanghai that we have started in 2018-2019 to connect SingCham members with all kind of communities and friends in China, Singapore, and globally. So since the COVID happened, we actually done mostly online, and that actually helped us to connect with industry professional, entrepreneur, business owner, technologies, as well as students. We used to have a lot of students participating, especially Singapore students who are going to China. So again, we have done the 17th event. We have done 9 offline and 8 webinar. I've invited more than 40-something speakers, including today, we're probably hitting 50. And then we have participation from 40 to hundreds of participants, depending on when it was held. And we focus on frontier technology like AI, IoT, blockchain, Web3, and Metaverse, as well as industry application like fintech, retail tech, HR, edtech, and etc. as well as special interest topics like investment, digital transformation, future of work, and innovation culture and sustainability. So today we are talking about tech for good because after some assessment, given what's happening in the world, we thought this is a very good topic to talk about and invited special guests to talk about it. It's also a topic that I feel dear at heart. And this is the poster of all the different events we have done from wide range. Hope all of you can continue to support us and join us. And of course, without the community partner, it's impossible to have run this event because we work with Alibaba Cloud, we have Origami, we have SingCham, Malaysia Chamber of Commerce, Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce. We also have professional organizations like ATTA, stand for Asia Transformation and Turnaround Association. We have Elite, Bryce Valley, all professional in investment and all area. We also work with Co-working Space Executive Center, work with Youth Alliance, OSG, Bridge Plus, under Capital Land is also a partner, of course with Hashtag. And this time we are very fortunate to be able to invite Rainy to support us as a volunteer to moderate today's session. So today's session is Tech for Good. Technology has no overall purpose of its own. That's what mentioned by McKinsey. So its effect is driven by us. Today's seminar is organized by SingCham as part of this to make it happen. As such, I would like to introduce our moderator today, specially invited. Renee is founder and MD of Hashtag. Is a talent marketing agency, and she's also a community leader, which has started her entrepreneurship. And she's an entrepreneur as well as a management consultant and trainer, specializing in brand transformation, internationalization, business development, service excellence, marketing, seminar production, as well as the Hashtag founder and managing director. She worked with many different industries and very familiar with the MICE industry as well. Interestingly, on her own, she also organize event as well as build up community called HER Entrepreneurs. If you're in Singapore, you know she is one of the mover and shaker in the women's movement and contribute to women in tech and many other things. As such, I'm not going to waste time. Renee, I'm going to pass the baton to you and then go from there.
All right, thank you so much, James, for the brief introduction. And today we're going to have these first the speaker presentations, followed by the panel discussion, and we'll leave some time for Q&A from the attendees. Okay, are we all ready? If you're all ready, please type into the chat to make sure you know that you guys are not slipping. You guys are ready. Type into the chat ready, and we're going to begin this session right now. Okay. All right. Great. All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's spotlight the fellow panelists and have them on screen. I'll first like to introduce Andeed. We have Andeed Ma here, followed by Ben. All right. I believe all of you could see the speakers right now. And of course, James as well. Okay, I hope all of you can see the speakers right now, I believe. Okay, let me do a quick check. Okay, and myself, it seems to be, maybe Herman is having an issue. Ended. Okay. All right. We have all the speakers now. Four of us, the three key panelists. We have Ben Tian, James Song, and Andeed Ma. Maybe before we begin, we allow them to kickstart their presentation, first with an introduction, followed by their presentation. Then we'll go into the panel discussion. All right. Okay, let's begin with a very first presenter. Who would like to go first? It's been arranged, right? So please auto volunteer yourself. Okay. Okay, please feel free to share your screen and introduce yourself and begin your presentation.
Okay. I'm Ben. I'll share my deck for you. Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to participate in the Tech for Good webinar. I'm Dean of SingCham in Intelligent Industry Research Institute. This time I will be here report to you how SingCham use artificial intelligence technology to empower better society. In SingCham AI ethic view, Tech for Good should do three kinds of things. Firstly, we should follow business sustainability principle to keep industrial sustainable development. Secondly, obey human-centric principle to improve social sustainable development. Thirdly, by controllable technology principle to technical sustainable development. And for human-centric example, in 2022, SingCham has responded to Shanghai urgent demand and launched the 6-in-1 AI solution, easy access system. One QR code combined maskless access, body temperature measurement, health code verification, and vaccination information, and nucleic acid query, and electronic lessons to help winners quickly verify multifaceted epidemic prevention and control information, save the public and complicated operation of searching for test report. The system has been deployed at the entrance and uses of many public winners in Shanghai Changning district. And another human-centric example is in 2021, SenseCare Smart Health platform took the pressure of Hubei province frontline medical workers by using deep learning algorithm to automatically identify the location of suspected COVID-19 lesions in the CT images and complete quantitative analysis in 2 or 3 seconds. SingCham AI Data Center fully supports Professor Lu Haibin and his team of Sun Yat-sen University to carry out drugs screening for COVID-19 and virus mutation forecasting. And for industrial sustainability cases, the high precision crop identification capability can accurately identify the wheat planting range and quickly determine the changes in the wheat growth, or whether it is crop changes or land use changes can be accurately monitored and identified to serve the agricultural sector for timely management. The intelligent remote sensing image interpretation solution of SingCham can quickly develop the algorithm model, accurately identify the distribution of wheat, and accurately monitor the growth and change of the wheat, provide information for supervision on management. Is also is computed by the SingCham SenseCore intelligent computing platform. With SenseCore AI computing infrastructure, SingCham joins the hands with an industry leader to develop AI detection algorithm for multiple scenarios of abnormal states, such as PV panel, foreign object, and abnormal hotspots, realizing seamless monitoring of PV equipment around the clock, promoting intelligent PV operation and maintenance, making it possible for AI technology to empower the whole life cycle of new energy industry, promoting digital transformation and intelligent upgrading of multiple chains from power production to grid operation and maintenance, and helping sustainable development of green energy. For controllable technology example, at the 2021 China Automotive Supply Chain Conference, the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers announced the completion of a group standard technical requirement and a microphone video and the image destination for automotive transmission, led by SingCham. Combining AI technology with industrial practice, SingCham proposed a framework to release intelligent desensing of data with AI and promotes the construction of a safer, reliable, and efficient data retain closed loop system. In 2022, SingCham has received the BSI 1012-2017 certification for personal information management system from BSI, British Standards Institution. And we also passed a lot of data protection and information security certification in China and the ISO standard. So thank you for listening. If you want to learn more about SingCham, how to use AI to empowering tech for good, you can scan the WeChat QR code to join the group. We can share more report and white paper for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben, the Dean of SingCham Intelligent Industry Research Institute. Next up, we have Andeed Ma, followed by Dr. James Ong. Andeed, please, your turn to present and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Renee, and great sharing from Ben. So let me just do a quick share screen. So let me just do share. All right. So can everyone see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So good evening, everyone, and thanks a lot for inviting me to this event. My name is Andeed. So today I'll be sharing something around the future of mankind. Awesome technology, but we want to make sure that we carry through the technology and not forgetting that people are still a part of this ecosystem. And I'm the current president of Risk and Insurance Management Association of Singapore. And just a very quick sharing about RIMAS, because we are not as well known as SingCham for sure. So I think for RIMAS, we are non-profit, right? Just like SingCham Shanghai, we are volunteers, and we have been volunteering our effort since 1988, right? In the discipline of risk management practices. And we have a tagline called "Everyone is a Risk Manager." And we believe that every organization should have people seeing themselves as a risk manager, right? To better learn, equip with tools and knowledge to manage the risk and capture the opportunities, right, that is in front of them. And with that in mind, actually, we set up 9 chapters, which is on the right-hand side. And AI risk is actually one of the very important topic that the association is focusing on. So I'd like to begin this character. I think some of you guys would know, right? Mankind. How can we forget about this word called Ren? Yes, and when you look at this person, Ren, look from the top to the left and to the right. In risk management, RIMAS focuses a lot on ISO 31000, which is a guideline, just like a standard, like BSI, what Ben has mentioned. But for ISO standard, there is a way to conduct risk management. And in risk management, we talk about risk principles, right? But in general, if you talk about principle, it's all about what the leader, right, which is the head of that person, right, head of the organization, what he sets as an appetite, right? So for instance, Ben earlier on shared the 3 principles, right? So it's very aligned, you see. So for organization like SingCham, they are very focused on, be able to know the principle, know the direction, then you set the framework and actually iterate with the processes, right? So whether you should get BSI or whether you should get some other certification, these are all part of the processes, right? So you can see how that then becomes very important, right? And if you look at tech for good, right, someone may be then wanting to make sure that AI performs what it is designed to do safely, right? That AI safety is like the framework that everyone will contribute on, and followed by all the AI reviews. And if you notice that the processes and framework is constantly dynamically iterating, but you barely look at principles changing. If you realize that your organization keep changing principles, right, it could be a danger, it could be a risk as well, right? So you can see with that kind of framework, you can progress, right? The framework serves as a support for you to move, while the principle is the guiding post, right? So I hope this part really gives everyone a very good insight, quick insight into risk management. And I would like to bring out this point about accountability, right? Accountability in the RACI chart that most of us know, right, is more than just who, but it's about the what, right? So what is the consequences in mind that you need to then work backwards, right, to determine who should be accountable and who should be responsible. So accountability cannot be a standalone word, right? It has to pair with consequences, all right? So in risk management, we talk a lot about consequences and the likelihood of a scenario happening. And here I'd like to share an example of a few scenarios, one very extreme scenario that I would like to play as a video. So the question is, can AI be dangerous, right? Just to let everyone be assured, these videos are fake, right? It's just a vision that someone created using this CGI, right? Computer graphics, right? So have a look. Okay, just for everyone to note, this is all fake, right? It's all designed by a computer. But can that happen? That could be a possibility, right? So the thing here is when AI is one of the key risk behind what many experts are talking about, as you can see, the very first scenario is when we are designing a robot for the purpose to kill, for example, or for destruction, right? You can see that then the principle is very different, right? You're designing a tag for good or tag for bad, right? So again, on the bottom portion, you notice that there's a self-driving car at a very high speed. Again, when AI is programmed to do something, it may solve problem, right? It may benefit mankind, but it could also develop destructive methods to try to achieve that goal. So if you do not have a framework to guide and have a process to monitor, right? That is when, this car may not care whether you vomit or you get into some injury of sending someone from home to an airport, right? So all this requires us to really think deeper, right, into AI safety, right? Especially when we are designing AI, right, for the good and for mankind. All right. So again, the question here is, where do we start? Most people will start from the available information. What informations do I have that is best available? But today I would like to focus on human and cultural factor, because this is so important in determining the risk appetite, right? And the willingness of the leadership to take on certain types of risks, and for individual to set the frameworks, to manage the frameworks, and to operate the frameworks, right? So all these are part and parcel of risk management. And I would like to share one areas of digital ethics, right? So digital ethics is no longer an option, if you realize, right? So, whether you are, here I give you an example of in US, there is a act called the Americans with Disability Act. They prohibit businesses with 15 people, 15 employees or more, from discriminating on the basis of disability, right? So when we are using, say, AI-enabled system, right, we may unnoticedly violated some of the acts that has been put in place by the government, for instance, right? And perhaps it's not you as a HR manager or HR director, it is the system, right? And the system could have done something that causes the consequences. Now, who is at fault, right? So you can see this is the reason why early on when I showcased to you the part about the mankind, right? What it means to be thinking from a risk perspective, right? Again, this can happen anytime from hiring, promotion, employing someone who you think might not have a job fit, right? So here you can see a form, right, that actually put in place even the act itself in UK, right? So this is a very promising employment practice as well, right? To provide a reasonable accommodation, right, for people with disability to have equal chances, even though you're using an artificial intelligence to help you to be a lot more efficient, right? So again, what I'm trying to point out here is violations can happen, right? Unknowingly. So sometimes we need to understand the risk. We need to peel the onions layer by layer, right, in order to better mitigate, right, and assess the situation. Now, I also want to bring out the point about biasness. When it comes to the future of mankind and tech for good, right? Bias in data will not do good in the future for the very simple reason, in the past, cities are, not just in China, for example, in many parts of the world, right? Cities are actually growing. New cities are created. And you realize that there is a decrease in rural areas population because many people has moved into the large cities. And there's a huge genetic diversity, right, that's happening right now in those places. Right, one of the key interesting insights and prediction that was done by experts is that, even in Africa right now, right, there is an increased observation of populations that are rapidly expanding, right? People are getting a lot smarter. They are moving out of their country, and the fact that in the future, areas of light skin colors, are also observing a reduced birth rate, right? So what would happen, ladies and gentlemen? Skin color may get darker, right? So if today we are only relying on AI tags or computer vision data that are very biased towards white skin, for instance, right? You face a very big challenge in the future, right? We also have this thing about moral risk, right? Right now there's this discrimination as well in terms of skin colors and races. And I also want to bring out the part about agency risk for those who are not aware. Agency risk is also something around algorithm. Machine learning is also typically embedded within a complex system, and sometimes it's not clear which party contributed to the algorithms, right? So there's that part of the risk that's inherent, right, within most of the artificial intelligence technology. So what do we do to manage this inherent risk such that it would not be a full-blown risk to organization? All right. Of course, I love to share this, where trust is a very big topic. Algorithms can logic, but they can't feel and trust as well for now. Of course, later on, James will share a little bit more, right? I think these days, don't be surprised that algorithms can start to feel, right? But it is still a very, very narrow AI where the sensory part is still improving. And what we hope people can look into the future of mankind when it comes to tech for good is to start adopting a very human-centric concept of society, right? As you can see on the left-hand side, it's almost like how most of the civilizations has came about, right? From hunting to agriculture to industrial to right now we are at society 4.0, right? Nobody talks about society 4.0 and society 5.0. Everybody talks about, what is the data age, knowledge age, right? But here I'm very focused on society. But what is society 5.0? Look at how each of the individual industry on the right-hand side, be it healthcare, automobile, or even financial or infrastructure, all this has elements of economic progression. And you want to be able to integrate them, design, implement, and evaluate using frameworks involving cyberspace and physical space, right? Which later on, I think James will talk about Web3 and Metaverse as well. So all this leads to economic progression, right? And slowly, we will have more of those feel and trust elements. And of course, yes, Ben has shared a lot about great works done during the pandemic season. But we do believe that in the future pandemic, robots will come with more functions, right, to help humans, right, to overcome even the search of pathogens, right, to basically take care of your basic needs like food, like transport, or even clothing. All right. And with that, that is my second last slide. The future of mankind is really about how you embrace technology, but don't become one, and have that human insight while you're building up the technology. Be it you're a software engineer, you're a politician, or you're a business leader. I think if everyone comes together to think about this, it will help us to take away these 5 points that I've briefly talked about, right? So it's a very heavy topic. I tried my best to put it down to as much for the SingCham and many of the audience to benefit as much. So feel free to connect with me. My name is Andeed. You can find me on LinkedIn pretty well. I've not patented the name, but there should be one Andeed in the world. So back to you, Rainy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andeed, for your sharing today. And let's invite Dr. James on next to introduce yourself in your presentation.
Thank you, Renee. You guys can see, right? Refer back to can you see me? Hello?
No, I don't know. Yeah, it's here. It's okay now.
Yeah, I was sorry about that. I was lost for about 10 seconds. Thank you very much. My turn. Given the time, I want to refer back to some of the things that Ben has talked about from SenseTime. SenseTime is one of the largest AI company in terms of market cap in the world. And the fact that Ben and I have known each other for a year plus, and he's been talking to me about tech for good all these years, right? And AI for good. And he talked about this three things that Andy emphasized, the three principles: sustainability, human-centered technology, as well as controllable technology. I think if you take away these 3 points by one of the largest AI company in the world, this is actually worth knowing about this. Then Andy is from the risk management side, talk about the risk framework from the principle down to the framework and down to the best practice, right? I think these are all interrelated. I know that many of you maybe heard about Tech for Good, and I'm also in a sense learning about it on a daily basis from professionals, from Andeed and Ben. This is an area that I have lots of passion about, and it's also the reason why we organize this conference. So my topic is about why and what and how, right? And I'll do it in a very quick manner. I want to start with this slide by Isaac Asimov, one of the futurists many years ago. He said that the saddest aspect of life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than the society gathers wisdom. Aligned with what Andy talked about, our technology, our knowledge is getting better, but we are not learning a lot of wisdom, how to use the technology, which is the reason why we're talking about this topic today. So why, right? Basically, I'm going to go through. So actually today, I've talked to several people, Andy included, about this major news on the press right now. If you are not aware of this, you want to be aware of this. In fact, it was one of the articles shared by all the SingCham exco, Michael. Actually, there's a scandal or controversy going on at Google right now. Talk about AI is becoming sentient or conscious. And if you look at the article right now, this is very exciting. It's also kind of scary as well about this thing happening. We're not sure what it is yet, but we're waiting to find out. This is an example why we want to talk about Tech for Good. That means there is this claim that AI is awakened based on the latest system called Lambda. It's a large language model created by Google. But I have no idea knowing it's right or wrong, but this is one of the reasons why you want to do Tech for Good. Part of the reason is because if you're familiar with AI, there's the bottom narrow AI, do the Turing test, to do single tasks, to more general AI equivalent to the human capability, to the singularity, to the super AI. There's a lot of debate on this right now between Elon Musk as well as Gary Marcus on the market in globally. It's also a very interesting topic. And that's another reason why people are talking about it, whether we have reached it there or are we going to be able to reach there at all. But whatever it is, Tech for Good is to make sure we prevent that. So if for those who are practitioners in the industry who follow McKinsey Global Institute has a Tech for Good white paper. It was written in 2019. I think it's still very relevant. It's talking about smoothing disruption and improving wellness. So I think Tech for Good has two parts. One is how to make sure you do good. Second is how to make sure tech doesn't do bad. I think Andy coined the word tech for bad as well. So there's a good part and a bad part. The good part is pretty clear. The framework created by McKinsey is quite clear. There's prosperity, individual well-being, sustainability that SingCham is following, fairness and trust. Andy talked about it. The different sub-area. These are the things we want our scientists, our engineers, and our businessmen to make sure that we try to get aligned with this area of doing good. Making sure that when you design your product, you make a business decision. Look at this area and make sure that you are trying to advance humanity and society in this area. Again, I'm not going to go through it given the time, but I think this will provide some awareness to many of the professional and senior executives who are joining this panel to look into that. And interestingly, on the McKinsey, there's one thing very interesting. It talked about the different technologies that's going to impact all the different areas of wellness. It turned out that data and AI is the top one, followed by connectivity and robotics. Of course, we have other things like AR, VR at the bottom, but I think metaverse is starting to come out later on. It's not there yet, but AI and data is the major concern right now, as well as connectivity and robotics. So these are the areas that McKinsey has highlighted is going to have a lot of positive impact on us. I think, again, need to focus on the right technology, ask the right question to solve Tech for Good on those areas. I personally kind of, in the sense what Andy has mentioned, I am actually interested in the fundamental AI question of what AI should be allowed to do. Why I'm so concerned? Because lately I watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of Netflix. If you watch Netflix, you watch the movie Social Dilemma, and you watch The Great Hack. In fact, there are probably a few more. It's quite scary when I watch it. I didn't know that in the last 5 to 10 years, our society has been impacted so much by Facebook and many other social media. And as a computer scientist myself, right, I know the reason is because algorithms are dangerous. Algorithm to me is a weapon of mass destruction. I started doing algorithm in 1985, 84. In studying algorithm. It was a very interesting class. I still have many books that talk about it. When an algorithm is put together with computing power and a computing reach of devices, it can reach out to so many people, to so many medium, it's becoming a very powerful thing. Facebook is a very good thing when it first started to connect people. After a while, it started to become connecting people and start to influence and manipulate people for political, for commercial reason. And again, I say any tech company, if we can do the 3 principles that Ben talked about, I'll feel much better. If a company who quote that I do this 3 principles, I feel better already. If at least must start to tell people you have this principle, right? So I think, watch out, algorithm is an invisible thing. You can't see it. It's really hard to see unless you're a computer scientist and look at the code. But if you have AI deep learning, you can't even see what it is because you can't explain it altogether. There's an algorithm, but you cannot explain why. It's a black box. So, I mean, from the AI perspective, we are going into a dilemma of AI for good or evil. There are AI ethics that we need to address. We need to talk about AI as a superpower. There's been talk about between being weaponized as a political tool, right? Between country and disrupt our so-called peace, right? Then we talk about AI being used as a weapon. Look at Ukraine war. Lots of the weapons are smart and using a lot of it. And of course, we talk about one of these days, the Google story, right? The AI is centennial. Can the AI become so smart it start to become conscious and start to make decisions for themselves against us, right? Against, we are not there yet, but I always have this simple guideline. You want to manage AI when it's still an infant, but you don't want to manage when it's a teenager. Right? When it's a teenager, it's already too late. So even though the chance is slow, but we need to watch out for it. Just like climate change is slim, but it may actually getting higher and higher over time, right? So we need to do step for good now as soon as possible. So what are the things you need to look at? Very quickly, I'm a multilateral person. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, I actually didn't know about it for a few years, but talking to Ben, then involved with William Chang at the sustainable thing at SEMCOP, they taught me a lot about what United Nations had done all these years to accumulate, to get everybody aligned, at least on the 17 goals. It's a humanly hard thing to get the whole world to at least agree on 17 goals. So for those who are not aware, make sure you know about it. Make sure your team and your employee knows about it. Make sure your kids knows about it. Make sure they go and study. Maybe come to our talk one of these days to know about it. The Sustainable Development Goal, they call SDG, has covered 17 from poverty, hunger, to education, to equality, to reduce inequality, to industry innovation, to economics, to life underwater, life on land, peace and justice, and partnership for goal, right? So you talk about these 17 things. You need a lot of people to get involved to do the right thing. But the minimum thing we need to do is bring everybody awareness on this one. I hope today we've achieved it with 64 people today. If we have done that, the 64 people will tell another 64 people, maybe another 200 people. That's how we get the information out on the United Nations Sustainability Goal. But I know it's quite political at United Nations, but at least there's a start. At least some human wisdom has created what it is today. Another thing is my point of view. I think to do tech for good, you need to know the technology trend because you can't see where it's coming. So you need to connect the dots backward and forward. This is the chart I created for myself. Having been in the tech industry for the last 30 over years, I look at 3 things. AI, from the AI 1.0 to 2.0 as a trend that has happened for the last 30 over years. Then if you look at the internet from Web 1.0 to the Mosaic browser day in the early 90s, to the Web 2, the social media and the virtual world like Second Life, now with the Web 3, the blockchain, right? Then if you look at the enterprise software system where we create system for enterprise to use from data processing in the 60s to ERP, CRM, e-commerce and O2O. I list all these things down because I lived through all this basically, and I have a feeling what has evolved. And I think the future trend is that AI is going to evolve into the AI 3.0, the metaverse, as well as what they call autonomous enterprise system, where AI, blockchain, and metaverse will power this thing for organizations to run themselves. in a sense like the DAO, which in the Web3 we call the decentralized autonomous organization. So these are all the concepts that's coming because technology are powering it. Each one of them bring many tech for good. It's going to bring lots of tech for bad as well if we are not aware. So I think that's why we invited Andy to come. He's a risk expert. So there are different levels of risk, from minimal risk to limited risk to high risk to unacceptable risk, right? So I think the risk level is getting higher and higher, especially with the social dilemma, as well as the great hack that's happening on using social media, using algorithm. Those algorithms is still very basic. If you look at some of the most sophisticated ones being coming out right now, with the kind of medium experience you talk about through the metaverse, it's going to become very scary. So how? Again, time is limited. How, when, and where, right? So simple thing. Again, United Nations aligned with the talk about the SDG. There's this thing in the corporate side that talk about ESG. I think we need to find a balance between E, the environment, S, so society or social, and governance. I give you one good example. Last week, I was at the Temasek Foundation event where they rewarded $1 million to this project called the Social Forestry Project. What I love about the project is that they try to solve an environment problem through solving the social problem for the forestry in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. They deserve the $1 million. There's another startup called Gate that actually provide satellite AI solution to look at the land from the satellite and figure out how to measure how much carbonization or decarbonization you have achieved, right? So I think the combination of this approach is important to make it happen. So that's one of the how I talk about. Second of all is my perspective, my take on enabling tech for good. Number one, we need to have multilateral dialogue and ecosystem for collective actions. We need to leverage on the United Nations. We need to build up an alliance in the Asia Pacific of the world to make sure that we are aligned and work together. I think the dialogue is important. I learned that from our scholar called Kishore Mahbubani. He talk about how country can achieve peace, right? I think this multilateral dialogue and ecosystem for collective action is important. Today, Tech for Good by SingCham is contributing to part of it, basically. Second, we need to make sure we have purposeful capitalism for tech ventures. We need to incubate innovation, but we need to make sure they are doing purposeful thing, aligned with the United Nations SDG goal or some of the benefit that we want to do. And third is a concept that I always talk about. We need to have tech for good. You can't manage tech for good just simply using human. You need to use technology to do it. So we need to invent new technology to make sure we know how to manage it. Just like we need to invent tools against cybersecurity, right? To protect ourselves. So quickly about my organization, it's called Artificial Intelligence International Institute, called AIII. It's something that I set up as a think tank to advocate sustainable AI for humanity. Basically, 4 things: how to make sure AI is sustainable in terms of technology. Second, in terms of commercialization, make sure you're profitable. Third, make sure you have impact and purposeful. And last, make sure you have the right governance, including inventing new governance technology to make it happen. If you're interested to talk about it, feel free to talk to me. Last but not least, I want to leave a last thought. Again, a week ago, I listened to this talk by Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. She gave a very good talk at Harvard University commencement. She talked about equality, democracy, gun control, technology, and disinformation. She really addressed some really hard problems. As a very respectable politician, she actually talked about things that make sense. So I want to leave a few quotes that she said with you so that you can take away. One thing she said is that we are richer for our difference and poorer for our divisions. I think it's a simple statement, but we are richer. It's okay to be different, but we need to make sure we are not divided. That's why working together as a community, as an alliance, become very important. Second thing she said, through genuine debate and dialogue, through rebuilding trust in information on one another, through empathy, because we're getting a lot of disinformation in the community right now, every day, right? So we need to make sure that we need to reclaim the space in between. Last but not least, the statement I love the most. After all, there are some things in life that makes the world feel small and connected. That means better than what Facebook has done. Let kindness be one of them. Let kindness be one of them. So I end my talk. Renee, I hope we have enough time.
Thank you so much, Dr. James, for your presentation. It seems that all of you have shared most items already. Yeah, but we are still on for a good conversation right now for our panel discussion, where we will be inviting our presenters right up again. You will be spotlighted right now. And we have, for those who just joined us, we have Ben Tian, the Dean from SingCham Intelligent Industry Research Institute, and former founding dean of Alibaba Cloud Research Institute. We've got Andeed Ma, president of Risk and Insurance Management Association of Singapore, adjunct lecturer of SUSS, and also Dr. James Ong, the founder and MD of AIII, and adjunct professor of SUTD. All right, welcome in this panel. Now, most of you have already shared, your perspective and the principles of tech for good, right? One key question is, how do you really define tech for good, and how would you measure the goodness of tech impact? Who would like to go first? Andy is smiling, so is James. So, okay, let's start with Andy, followed by James, and followed by Ben.
Yeah, so maybe I just just highlight a bit on the graph that I drew about the run. Sometimes if we are just measuring based on the best available information, we are not necessarily benchmarking against something that our organization is like. You see, so KPIs are good, but KPIs used wrongly is basically no good, right? So that brings us back to what are the frameworks and how are the frameworks and processes running based on that risk appetite or the principles that you have decided to take on. Because I would be very, very confident to say that there's no one single organization has the same set of principles. If you do find one, 50% chance one will fail and one will succeed, right? So one of the things here is, even though you may be in the same industry, it doesn't mean you have to use the same metrics or benchmark to measure whether a particular technology is helping you to do good or what you define as good, right? So I may be doing good by hiring disabled employees. Does that work for some other businesses? Right, so that's the questions for the group, right? So yeah, I think I'll stop up to this point and let the rest share more.
So Ben, you want to go first?
Okay. It's a very good question. And how to measure AI ethic is difficult for practice. So in past 3 years, we find a method to measure tech for good is to measure the business value and the social society value and technology innovation value and environment value. That we can analysis plenty of case study, and we summary and build a case library. But for the other hand, we must measure AI ethics risk as well as tech for good risk. It may be bring us damage, environmental damage, and maybe hurt others, and bring us some loss situation like energy, traditional energy. So we built a risk identify database to measure tech for good or tech for bad, and we collect global bad cases for ESG for to summary tech for bad. So for both of hands, we can measure tech for good. Thank you.
Okay, Renee, I'm going to give a quick answer. Number one, I think to answer that question is actually a very tough question. And Renee always asks tough questions. For me, I think it's really hard to know how to measure it well. And because first of all, the technology is shifting. AI every day I'm reading on the literature is changing. So it's very hard. But I think there are a few metrics that I find useful. First thing I want to achieve is awareness. A lot of people are not even aware of the danger or the risk, or even aware the technology can do so much good and bad, basically. I think building up the community to bring awareness, then because you bring awareness, then you can ride on the collective wisdom of the people, because no one person have all the capability or the knowledge, right? So I think first thing is to bring awareness so people come together, brainstorm, debate, dialogue, right? Basically, right? So I think once you have done that, then you come up with the best practice based on the risk professional or the technology professional to build the necessary thing in terms of the McKinsey and for good, right? Also be aware of the risks, aware of the possible. The professional will come in and work out the rest of the detail. For my end is that I think we are now doing a lot of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship has a lot of impact. That's why purposeful entrepreneurship become very crucial. We need to help all the youngster or old who are startup to make sure that, because they are fighting for survival, right? Make sure, first of all, they align with the purpose. Make sure the investor who gave them money is doing the right thing, because they have to survive. If the next Google or the next SenseTime is not at the right purpose, then they will be in the wrong. Then you create a set of new tech company that is not right? And the third one, again, back to my talk, is I think there's tech for good, right? We need to come up with the scientists to look at technology to solve that problem as well, because we can't do it through human supervision only. We need better way of doing it in terms of technology. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And so how do we ensure the sustainability in tech for good? Sustainability can be for sustenance of the business, or it can be interpreted as sustainability in practicing good long-term, right? You spoke about being human, Andeed. So would you like to share Andeed first?
Yep, I think in order to be sustainable, right? I just want to also highlight the fact that, for folks who are not risk managers, or it's the first time that you hear someone relating risk to AI, there's no such thing as zero risk. For every good that you do, someone is planning the other way around, right? So that's the reason why, there's a very important aspect of understanding that you can't mitigate all risk, right? And reacting to a risk is not a risk management, right? You're just reacting. You're just trying to comply to something, right? So to bring out this point, why? Because once you understood this, you realize that risk is a very evergreen activity, and you will constantly pace yourself with the different types of trend, like what James has mentioned, right? You can never be on the same path as the trend, but you can anticipate how the trend is coming along, right? Yes. And potentially, James and I, and we, with Ben as well, I think the last round we talked about, potentially there could even be a third winter, right, for AI.
Thank you.
Right? Is the winter going to be like in the past where there was a lack of support by the government in terms of funding? Or is it because there is a lack of technology? Well, we have quantum computing coming, right? So I don't think it's those elements. But if you notice that why today we are talking about tech for good and the future of mankind, is because if you don't involve the mankind as one of our consideration, the sustainability of AI and the sustainability of doing good with sustainable technology will end pretty soon. Yeah, so that's what when I say end, is you will start seeing people stop talking about it, not doing anything. The technology may be floating there, but simply no commercialization. Yeah, so that is where we don't want to head to. And that's why you need to come together collectively, build an intelligence, right, to ensure that we move together in a sustainable manner. Yep, so that's my take about sustainability and mankind.
Thank you, Andeed, on this. And how about Ben or James? Who would like to go next?
I can go if you, okay. I think Renee bring out the term sustainability. I think it's important to get this definition correct. There's two meanings to the whole thing. Sustainability could mean resilient and continuity, right? It can also mean sustainability in a way, in terms of the ESG, in terms of environment, society, and governance, right? There's two meanings. To answer the question, I know it's always a struggle to balance, making money, and etc. But I always believe that by using technology for sustainability, aligned to that, you will ensure the sustainability of the technology. So if I'm a tech provider like SenseTime, I want to make sure SenseTime stay successful forever. So I need to make sure I do sustainability contribution, right? So that I can make sure I'm sustainable. As a technology company, I'm sustainable, and vice versa, right? Basically. So I think this is a closed loop of self-reinforcement. So it's a positive thing. But the thing is that you need to get this point across to people so that they see the benefit of doing. It's almost like sometimes it's better to give so that you can gain more. So along that kind of concept. Yeah. Ben, I'm going to pass to you.
Okay. We can consider about three tools to empower tech for good. Firstly, global case library, and secondly, technology governance toolbox of tech for good, and third is interdisciplinary research on tech ethics can help us self-track and environment. It's a new area, so we try our best to find the new way and the new practice. Thank you.
Right, and you need principles, frameworks, and processes in place to implement tech for good, is what Andeed mentioned just now. So, but how can we proliferate tech for good if profit can be impacted, which in turn may hinder growth of the business, and that affects sustainability? What's the strategy around that?
Yeah, I think I picked this up quickly. I think commercialization actually is not the tough part, but commercializing the wrong way, wrong approach, wrong product, hiring the wrong people, setting up the wrong entity in the wrong place to drive tech for good is disastrous, right? So I think it comes back to the question whether do we have a very structured and comprehensive approach, right, towards say looking at how we include all our ecosystem players, right, to continuously improve existing best practices like what SenseTime has done, or leveraging on best available information to collectively come together to set a certain standards. I think many of you guys may not be comfortable with like ISO and standards, right? But do you know that if everyone in this world, right, agrees in a certain way of moving and doing things, and by discipline, that standard is one of the processes that is governed by principles that the world has collectively, not all, majority agreed on. Would a pandemic like COVID-19 be better managed? Think about that when there's a standardized way of doing things, right? So I'm kind of bringing risk management up to another stage where it is a global level. So my biggest concern is never commercialization. It's easy. But when you commercialize it the wrong way, right, to salvage it, it's going to be very, very difficult. Yeah, because you have a reputation to protect. All right, so yeah, back to you, Randy.
Yeah, next, Ben or Dr. James, any opinion on this?
Okay, if we consider AI as the next generation infrastructure, it will impact everyone for global market, and when we get bigger model, complicated algorithm, and how can we to realize controllable technology is a key question for all researcher and industry practice. participator. So we need a higher standard beyond the compliance and law. We need self-check and self-monitor for any risk, new risk, and for new relationship between environment, people, and technology. So it's very quickly changed for this relationship. So every big company need to a team or a research center to monitor for standard, a new standard, new risk, and other framework. So for SMB and the public sector, maybe we can build online AI as a service platform or online service for SMB and developer. That's all. Thank you.
Right, a lot of checks. So self-check, cross-check, double-check, potential risks, right? How about you, Dr. James? Yeah.
Muted, James, you're muted.
Oh, I see on the questions of standard, I think two situations, right? There are things that we can plan ahead, there are things that we can't, right? For things to plan ahead, we definitely, as human wisdom, you want to have a standard so that we are ready and efficient to deal with it, basically, right? Obviously, whether we can come to consensus or not is do we have humanity stupidity, or we have wisdom to really agree to disagree or come up with something that we can compromise, right? So I think that is one part. At the same time, we also have situation like COVID, which is unexpected, unforeseen, right? You don't have a standard to go with, but you need to at least have some sort of values of respect to each other so that you are ready to sit together and solve the problem in an emergency situation, right? So I think it all boils down to human wisdom, basically, whether is it through standard or through mechanism by which we can work out a solution. So that's the answer I can give. Yeah.
So as we speak about this, what are some of the potential upsides, okay, or opportunities, real opportunities that we see if, we implement tech for good? What do you think are the opportunities? Yeah.
I can answer that. The one, I think from the investment perspective, I think the next wave of investment, right? In fact, I won't say the next wave has been happening, but I think there'll be more, will be more purposeful type of investment, impact investment. I think the world has plenty of money. The philanthropists are willing to fund project along that line. Second, I think in terms of investment, there are a big investment movement who are looking into the impact investment in terms of ESG or the SDG area, right? And I think because you have purpose, so your KPI is not just financial, which is a very important part, but you also have people who are willing to help you as part of the incubation and acceleration of your startup. I think that is a big area, and you can do things in a more purposeful way that sometimes bigger company can't do because they have their bottom line or the short-term KPI to deal with, right? Basically.
Okay, Andeed?
Yeah, I think AI itself is the opportunities, ladies and gentlemen. I believe in this call we have global participants, right? People from not just from China, Singapore, APAC, or Africa, right? I'm sure there's some, I was speaking to someone from Africa. It is a topic that right now stays at a very, very vibrant stage where, we are continuously learning and experiencing, right? And one of the biggest opportunity I feel is even, we always say that technology is ahead of legislation, right? Where legal frameworks are always slower. There's a time right now that you realize that legislation may catch up very quickly, right? Or be even ahead to do what? To govern, right? Where it's a separate topic, right? how to make sure that tech do for good. We need to ensure that there's a proper governance over what AI is doing and how AI is doing, right? And that can only be done through proper legislation of how that AI that is policing the AI, right, to do a good job, right? So I believe this is actually the frontier of AI, and there are actually people in UK already talking about AI audits, right? So people have not probably even stepped into that space. But myself, been actively involving in the UK charity organization, constantly talking about how to use privacy, for instance, right, as a benchmark, right, against how we audit how artificial intelligence or super artificial intelligence should ultimately be behaving, right, and start to anticipate, start to detect, start to acknowledge and respond in a very timely and dynamic manner. Because what happened? The risk will come and go, right? Like what Rainy and just now mentioned on Ben's comment. Yeah, so huge opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. So I think it starts here in this event.
Oh, well said. How about you, Ben?
Okay, firstly, for public company, as we all know, ESG is a cost for public company in the next 10 years. AI ethic is a clear cost for public company like SingCham. For example, SingCham built a ethic committee to monitor and to train employee. So it's a new chance for the researcher like us, like James. And secondly, for next generation, old teacher, especially for middle school teacher, need to train students to for tech for good. We have rated tech for good in China teaching material for students for more than 2,000 middle school, and we train about 7,000 teachers for both AI technology and AI ethics. And thirdly, for AI scientists, they try their best to create automotive AI ethic monitor tools. That means use AI to monitor AI, use AI to improve AI for ethic standard, because algorithm become more and more. It's very hard to monitor every one point with man labor. It's very difficult for us. So we need to create better monitor tools to trace AI ethics, to trace tech for good or tech for bad. That's all. Thank you.
Right. So now you're talking about ethics here. So how to
Nice.
empower tech for good with collective initiatives and industry best practices? You mentioned about building humane processes, a decision tree as one builds a tech. Shouldn't we build good people first, then tech? What should we do, to build these, collective initiatives and also industry best practices?
What should we do? Okay, I'm going to take on this question. Something that we are actively working on. I think, first of all, as SingCham, right, with Vice Chair, William, we've been working together to do a number of sustainability event at SingCham. It's something that in SingCham community, we care a lot about it, even though we are in Shanghai, but we are most active in China right now doing that and aligned with the China so-called 碳达峰、碳中和, it's very aligned to do that. And Singapore has many companies like SemCorp, CapitaLand are actually doing a lot of work in that area. Second of all, as AIII, we are working with different tech company or association. In fact, we are working on something towards something what we call Tech for SDG. Tech for SDG is something that aligns with the United Nations in terms of some of the goal we want to achieve. Maybe with initial focus in Asia right now, because we need some time to get it bootstrapped. So for those of you who are interested to look into Tech for SDG Alliance in Asia, feel free to contact me. I'm going to send you my LinkedIn later on, right? And I think it's something that we don't have all the answer, but at least we know that we have the United Nations SDG as the goal, and people have spent years working on it, and there's a wisdom of human over a certain time. But we can at least do something following that as a framework and start to work together to empower this, whether from the investment perspective, from the technology creation, from the entrepreneurship, or even from the big corporations supporting from your CSR. So these are all areas to do, plus also the think tank and the university, because a lot of thought leadership needed to resolve some of this problem. Yeah, so this I'd like to share with you all, and we can talk about that. Feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, Andeed.
Yeah, likewise, I think same as what James is doing. I think in order to answer the question that Renee has asked, I'm focusing a lot on infrastructure of trust. Right. So this term is coined by the charity organization I work with in UK. And there's 5 elements that they focus a lot on, which today I've talked about in my presentation, which includes things like bias, what Ben has mentioned as well, ethics, right? There's also the elements of trustworthiness, right? And we also talk a lot around privacy, especially in UK and US, where it's a big topic for them. And the last element is actually what we call cybersecurity. Don't forget the cyberspace is where AI lives on for now, and it will still continue to live on that space. And even though after it comes out into the physical world, there's still that connection back into the cyber world, and it's a risk that no one should ignore anymore, right? In fact, I just did a CIO and CISO event, in a closed door event. We're even looking at having some of the chief levels to pledge, right, to have this as one of their key topics in the board meeting, because often not cyber topics, cybersecurity is at the sub topics of an IT topic, right? So, but it's no longer insignificant anymore, because it's something that could be your biggest vulnerability, regardless of what businesses you do, right? So yeah, I would say that is my focus now, and happy to work with anyone who is interested, to discuss or implement or design something together.
Superb. Ben.
Okay. From technology view, as James mentioned, we need to trace human behavior in metaverse. It's very different from in the real world. So we develop decision intelligent algorithm to monitor people play games online, and we found some very interesting relationship between different people to play one games. And secondly, we need, as we all know, good data. Good algorithm depends on good data. So we must to protect clean data, to collect data from public channel, and we must to remove the dirty data, so we can protect the algorithm output for with tech for good. And thirdly, we need to develop tech for good from hardware layer rather than software, because as we all know, the sensor sensor will collect plenty of data in a smartphone and a smart car. Is very important for improve tech for good level. So for example, SingCham developed the new the fourth generation sensor for smartphone. It can protect our privacy data in hardware. So maybe in the future, people analysis data from sensor is not follow the global standard, but also on sensor hardware, you can remove privacy data and protect our data. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
James? James, have any thoughts on this? Further thoughts? No? Okay, yes. Right. So you spoke about the building tech for good on hardware. Are there some other sustainable technology? I mean, we talked about robotics and AI just now. Are there any other forms of sustainable technologies that you think would be something that that will be trending in the next 5 years? Any thoughts on this?
Next 5 years now. Wow. Okay. I think creating technology requires some expertise and background. For myself, the area I'm looking at is something like called computational governance, right? How do you make sure governance are computational, which is what I call tech for good, basically, right? So I think there's an area that is important, similar to something like the smart contract for blockchain, right? So I think there's an area that needs to have so that we can implement governance more efficiently, quickly, based on unforeseen situation. At least that's the area I like to do because that's my background for the last 30 over years. Yeah. But for some people, they might be strong in some other area. You probably have to pick what kind of technology you want to develop, whether is it for material or is it AI or in terms of healthcare, right? So many areas basically.
Any other inputs on this?
Yeah, maybe I'll just share from a sector perspective. It can be on a country level. I think four major industries or sectors that will continuously be areas where, if you talk about societal, right, elements in part of ESG, it will still be important. Number one, it will be still healthcare, right? So I think innovations and AI technologies in terms of healthcare advancement, right? We even talk about how to insert, right, nano AI robots through bloodstreams, right, to do targeted cancer intervention, right, rather than destroying all the normal cells, right? So you see a lot of combination of like nanotechnologies together with some of the advancement in AI, right, in healthcare, right? And in terms of, I think this morning, our own minister, Tian, also talks about infrastructure, right? It's not about having more electric cars to replace, petroleum-driven cars, but it's more about how we build infrastructures that are ready, right? And that's one sector to bring about mobility in a much seamless manner, right? Should we have public transport just right outside our house? Right? We used to have, in Singapore, we have something called LRT, right? Which is like a very small sectorial train, right? But you see that is sort of like a pilot, but can we bring that down, and with technology, with AI improvement, right? To help mobility, right? Not just for people like us, but also for aging populations, like especially in places like Singapore, right? And Japan, right? And even Australia, right? And New Zealand. How do we help them to mobilize better, right? And last but not least, of course, I think William has a question on funding, and that's why financial technology is so important, right? And yes, James is right. Blockchain technologies will one day become a very common thing that is being used in everyday financial transactions. And you might see that fundraising may not be something that uncommon. And it can be something as easy as a simple consent within a close-by community for you to raise funds in a much shorter time to perform a much smaller task that is a piece of a bigger piece. Yeah, so you can see all these are what I feel would be where technological advancement and why tech for good would be very important if we have to start the discussion today, right? So healthcare, infra, mobility, finance.
Wow, fantastic. Right. So, you partially answered William's question. So I'll just read out the question, right? So for Tech for Good to succeed, there should also be available source of financing to support companies' effort to develop tech for good. What are your thoughts? I think James shared a point on impact investment. But other than that, when you tell people impact investments, like, oh, the funds won't be that great, won't be that big, right? So where else can we find money? How can we support the venture that is meaningful? So what are your thoughts on this?
I can share on this one because I just talked to somebody who is an expert in this area, right? He told me that their investment, to get money, there are a few types of money. Of course, first of all, there is money from the government to do research, right? Government fund the university and the research lab. That's one type. Then in the private sector, there's something called philanthropy. Philanthropy are people with high net worth, they're willing to give donation to solve a certain problem, right? And they know the problem may not have return, but there needs to be some pre-investment to make it happen. So philanthropy is one. Then another type is called impact investment, is more commercial. So as you invest, there's an ROI you need to achieve and etc. Right? Then another category is the ESG, which is different, right? ESG is more like for corporate side where you want to, a public company, you want to make sure you comply with ESG to make sure that you achieve a certain risk management profile. That way you bring a lot of benefit to the company. And some company will invest or innovate or fund some startup to do something along that line. Yeah. So I think there are different categories. I'm also new to this area. I'm learning a lot. And I found the money is important. I think William asked a very good question, right? So need to solve that source problem, right? Basically.
Yeah. Any other sources of financing, you think, right? Even the banks, when you talk about ESG, right? There's it's a checklist that banks are going to give to corporates. The bigger the companies are, the more they have to fulfill certain criteria before they can even get loans. So I think slowly people, they're rolling out. So yeah, Andy, do you have something to say?
I think ESG investing is another realm of funding, right? People talking about government issuing blue bonds and green bonds, but it has to have industry acceptance, right, and collaboration, right, in order for some of these underwritings to be done as well, right? And talking about funding, I mean, I'm thinking something even further right, into the future, right, where if tech for good is really meant for good for mankind, even in organization, why can't employee be the funding source? Why funding can only be funded to stocks and shares and purely for capital gain and not for projects, right? So, this is not common, not a thought that people are talking about, but it kind of brings back to, when if we see that the tech is for good, right? And it's meant for good, not just for me, but for my next generation. And I work with this company and I believe, for example, what SingCham is doing, right? Why can't the funding be from the employees as well, right? So these are things that is, can continue to discuss and innovate, experiment, trial in order to get there.
So it's about collective efforts.
Yeah,
initiatives.
Peer-to-peer lending has been in the market for many years, right? It's not an old concept. sorry, it's not a new concept, right? It's an old concept, but it could be applied within organization. It has now, it is always outside of organization, right? Where individuals has collectively similar interests. But think about in a workplace, everyone has a similar interest. Why can't a peer-to-peer lending be happening within organization? Yeah. So again, just food for thoughts, right?
Right. Ben, are you there? If not, okay, let's proceed with now it's a Q&A segment. Feel free to type in your questions, and we'll take in the questions if they're relevant, right? Because we have limited time. So there's a question from Sung So Park. What could Tech for Good approach do for robotics? For example, there are multiple applications for robotics, logistics, delivery industry, but is there an approach to consider in fundamental level how robots and humans can coexist together? I think, yeah, this is an ongoing discussion. How can we coexist together as part of a community, right? Robots, if we build them, yeah.
I think this is James here. I think in general, I mean, robotic can be pretty wide, but I think my first instinct is that for those people who are mobility challenged, or when you're elderly, right? I think robots can do a lot of things to help. I mean, of course, you can also help to deliver things so that you can stay at home and get lazy, right? But I'm more focusing on people who need it the most, right? When you're elderly people, we really need the robots to do something for you. Or I think the greatest application in the world for robotic is providing house cleaning robots for all the wives or the housekeeper. That would be the #1 killer application in the world. If somebody can invent that, you really make a lot of family really happy. Yeah, where you can clean out all the dust and clean the floor, wash the toilet. Right? I think that will be wonderful.
And cook, and take care of the kids. Yeah.
That would be one of the major applications. Maybe SenseTime should think about investing into there. Ben, think about it. I think Ben's signal is bad. I think he's off.
It's okay. It's okay. You could proceed. Andy, do you have any thoughts on that? Yeah.
No, I was actually just looking at William's question, comments around.
Yes.
I think IoT side of things, I'm not the best person. Definitely, I think James and Ben would definitely. Of course, I have a term called homogeneous society, right? Which even now in mankind, we are still not achieving it, right? That's why we are still having the issue of biasness, discrimination. When I say a homogeneous society is when man and machine are basically treated on equal ground. You don't call machine eat. You can actually, give a gender to the machine and include them as one of the key stakeholders, right? To be inclusive, right? That's my only take about how robot and human can coexist. That's provided us, the inventor, are open-minded enough to start to take on this, right? And that leads to that question around financial institution and corporates, right? It has always been a traditional mindset where they look at return on investment, especially for banks, right? In order for ESG Tech for Good to be successful, there needs to be a maverick to have this mindset slowly, progressively change a little bit. Why? Because if you look at the Web3 world, right? I just came back from a Web3 conference as well. Every single Web3 founder will tell you one thing. We are setting this project or fund as a trial and error. We can't guarantee you we will succeed, but we can guarantee you we are setting one stone closer towards, that Web3 environment, right? We may sacrifice, but we are willingly to experiment, trial, and make errors. Yeah. So they already adopted a risk appetite, a risk principle that we are ready to fail. Fail to how much, and it set a framework and a process to manage it. Yeah. So if if the traditional businesses can start to think, and be a bit more open-minded towards how some of the say innovators are looking at things, then we could potentially see how tech for good would help them along the way. If not, disruptions are just coming along regardless, right? Yeah, so disruption will not wait, put it that way. It will just come along. Yep.
Interesting. Instead of preparing to succeed, which most people think about is preparing to fail, then how do you plan around it?
In fact, two major industry, right? Banking and insurance, right, are facing this very, very critical period where it's either they do or die, because the fintech and the insurtech will ultimately take over a new dynasty, right, of how they do things. Yeah. Well, they are taking action, so I'm glad.
Okay, so it's about time. Before we wrap up, any last comments? James and Ben, you're finally back after you were frozen for a bit. Okay, all good. Right. So yeah, then it would be good to pass on to James, right? Pass back the baton to you to close the session.
Yes. Thank you, Renee. Thank you for the well-moderated sessions. Really add a new flavor to our whole Tech Tuesday as a new moderator. And of course, thanks to Andy and Ben. We're going to wrap up. I know there are many people ask many questions. I even get private questions from my good friend Dennis, and I don't even have a chance to reply to him. But don't worry, if you're staying hang around, we can talk after we wrap up. So next thing is we're going to bypass all the personal profile. Okay, doing closure. We need some of you to later on open up your video so we can take a photo. First, I would like to appreciate the team at SingCham, where William and our two vice chair and Yichun. Of course, we have our executive director. And I think we lost the name. Oh my God. Tai and also Esther. Of course, we have the 3 volunteers. As you all know, at SingCham, we are all volunteers. It's non-profit. We're doing it because we love what we're doing. We want to promote the community, right? We hope some of you will be interested to join us to do more tech for good. So the next thing is that we're going to have, let you inform you about upcoming event. Very coincidentally, SingCham is partnering with the Indian Business Association to invite the United Nations SDG coordinator for China for the next event. And feel free to scan the QR code on the right-hand side. And we have Mr. Siddha Chatterjee, and he's an expert in SDG, and I look forward to attend his talk 2 days from now. And it's very aligned with what I'm doing. It turned out that in fact, we planned these 2 events and not coordinated at all altogether. Yeah. So hope you can scan and do that. So next is that we're going to go into a photo session. Herman, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Can you all please kindly turn on your video? Don't worry, no matter how you look, it will be fine. Hope to at least capture some photo for our promotion of SingCham so that we can tell our exco we have really real people come and attend. We appreciate all of you turning on your video. I think we have Fei Xiang, we have Natalie. Hi, Natalie. Just want to say hi. Dennis. Hey, Dennis. Hi, Mr. Chong, Song Su, and we have Miss iPhone. I don't know who is that. Oh, we have Yap. Oh, hi, Yap. How you doing? Of course, we have William, and then we have William Liang. Okay, good. Mr. Kindness also in Shanghai. Hi, Raymond. Good. Jermaine. We have Nixon as well. How are you doing, Herman? Can't hear you.
Okay, we need to take it twice because we have a lot of people here. So I'm going to take the first one. Everyone say cheese. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Okay, I'm going to take a second one. Everyone, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Cheese.
Cheese.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then the next one is you guys can hang around. Apologize for the QR code for the WeChat group. It was expired. If you want the WeChat, scan the left-hand side. If you don't have WeChat, please can you email us or go to our website at SingCham, or the worst case, you scan my LinkedIn, then I will connect you to the WeChat and guide you to set up WeChat if need to be. And also, if you're interested about more tech for good or tech for SDG, and also want to work with SingCham and join SingCham as a member, which I fully encourage, we have an expert like William, who is an expert from SemCorp, and he can guide you towards all the sustainability stuff network in China. He will know practically everybody in China in this area. Yeah.
Do join us at SingCham. Thank you. Thanks, James. Thanks.
Feel free to, I'm gonna keep this going and then hang around. For those, thank you, Renee, Andeed, and Ben, and of course to the SingCham team as well. Finally, we have another session done. I think, Herman, you can end the recording, I believe.